Turning to the criminal Federal Justice Department probe into the coup conspiracy and how it's getting closer to Trump and his top aides. The White House counsel we heard so much about in those hearings, Pat Cipollone, now subpoenaed by the federal grand jury investigating all of this. That is a big deal. Remember, everything we heard up to this point, including Liz Cheney's pressure on him, didn't mean that he was inside the criminal investigation. He's the highest-ranking White House official known to have been called to testify by the Fed. So this is a significant escalation in who they're trying to talk to. We all saw some of the testimony that did come out when he was finally basically badgered by Liz Cheney and a House subpoena to talk. He reportedly spent 8 hours behind closed doors. We also got that awkward moment when asked about who was it in all of the White House that didn't want people to leave the insurrection.
What about the president?
Yeah.
She said the staff. So I answered.
No, I said in the White House.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. I thought you said who else on the staff. I can't reveal communications, but obviously I think, yeah.
Yeah. The most charitable thing you can say about that is that he does have some legal rules around what he can say. So if the president said certain things that were privileged, and in that forum, he is still trying to protect them. That's charitable. The bottom line, though, what was so effective in that questioning is something that even Trump's most loyal, long-serving aides, the ones who tried not to testify, admit, and that everybody else knows. Then President Trump wanted the insurrection to continue. He did nothing to stop it. He told reportedly Kevin McCarthy, maybe these people are more upset than you are. And when he knew they were armed and he knew they were criminally breaching the Capitol, he doubled down on the attack and incitement of Mike Pence, who was in, we learned, lethal danger. That's very bad. Is it a crime? Well, that's what's under investigation. And we know this same person, Cipollone, now about to talk to the feds, warned that many things were shaping up to be Trump administration crimes.
Mr. Cipollone said something to the effect of, please make sure we don't go up to the Capitol, Cassidy. Keep in touch with me. We're going to get charged with every crime imaginable.
So are you aware of any phone call by the President of the United States to the Secretary of Defense that day?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
That was pretty clear. There needed to be an immediate and forceful response statement, public statement that people need to leave the Capitol now.
Mr. Cipollone and I had a brief private conversation where he said to me, we need to make sure that this doesn't happen. This would be legally a terrible idea for us.
A member of the committee and one of the Republican members says this about the subpoena.
This is probably bad for former President Trump. I hope Pat Cipollone actually just tells the truth. I have no doubt that he hasn't, but there's no reason to protect particularly criminal behavior or what could potentially be criminal behavior.
We are back with former Watergate prosecutor Nick Ackerman. If they don't know you're a lawyer, you got the bookcase to prove it. Thanks for coming back, sir.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
I want us to really be clear about what's happening because there's this thing, it's a bias in the human mind and certainly in the news media where you get tired of something. You go, well, I heard about Pat Cipollone, so what? And yet, from what I understand, walk us through it, Pat Cipollone's worst day ever in this whole thing is now, because this isn't just the committee, however important that was. This is the federal criminal probe. For someone who says, okay, enough with Pat, can you explain that?
Well, I think this is actually the worst day for Donald Trump because Pat Cipollone is going to be talking a lot more before the grand jury than he ever did before the January 6th committee. In the January 6th committee, they were concerned about getting them in there, getting Pat in there, having him talk as much as they could get information from him. But they bent over backwards. They allowed him basically to claim executive privilege with any conversations he had with Donald Trump. They allowed him to claim attorney-client privilege. None of this is going to go anywhere with the feds. He's going to claim certain privileges with respect to individual questions. They'll take him before a federal district court judge who's going to order him to testify, tell him that there is no privilege. He could appeal it to the circuit court, but all of this will go much quicker. It'll go behind closed doors. Unlike the committee, the Department of Justice doesn't have to worry about midterm elections and the fact that they may not be around next year. That's not going to happen. So I think that the Department of Justice is going to get a lot more information from Pat Cipollone. Right. If he thought that was his worst experience going before the committee, he's in for a major surprise when he appears before that grand jury.
Yeah, and Nick, I don't know if you know the expression when you're close enough with someone you can finish their.
When you can finish their
sentences. Finish their sentences. That's what I was going for. I'm going to try to finish yours, but you tell me whether I'm off or not. You said there's no privilege, and I hear that as a lawyer and think there's no privilege for insurrection. There's no privilege for coup. There's no privilege for any crime being hatched out of the White House. Contrary, there may be times where valid White House lawyers or national security staff dealing within the law have things that aren't just going to pop out, certainly not in a public forum. Am I finishing your sentence right or not? Because it's your sentence. And what does it mean?
You're completely finishing my sentence. Absolutely.
Okay, go ahead.
Because traditionally, executive privilege does not apply to talking about criminal activity. I mean, when Pat Cipollone came in, he was basically a fireman. He was putting out fires in the White House. Every time Donald Trump was going to do something, whether it was to fire Jeffrey Rosen and put in Donald Trump's puppet, or he was working on the fake electors, or he was talking about seizing voting machines, I mean, he wasn't coming in to talk about national security, about government policy, or anything to do within the power of the presidency. This was all criminal schemes that Donald Trump was hatching, and Pat Cipollone was there to put out the fire. So I don't see how any of that could possibly be covered by any privilege.
Let me get you on that point, and then I want to go also to this alleged Secret Service cover-up. But final thing here, you have this elector plot under investigation, and we've been tracking that as something that is potentially criminal, even if there never were an insurrection, but also potentially criminal overlapping with the coup plot of the 6th. Because as we showed recently in our coverage, and you know this, Nick, there were people trying to submit fraudulent, potentially criminal material on the 6th to Mike Pence to execute a coup based on elector fraud. That I count at least 2 crimes, maybe more. So given that we know that the DOJ is investigating that part of the plot, and we know that's one of those long-running, we've looked at these arrows, it's one of those long-running pieces, do you see that as something that they could get to Cipollone on, that they could find out from him, did Donald Trump know about, plan, plot, want to engage on something that at least after December 14th was illegal?
Oh, of course. I mean, what Cipollone can do is he puts the intent and knowledge in Trump. He had direct conversations with Donald Trump. He spoke to him. Donald Trump came to him. He went to him when certain matters occurred. Yes, I mean, this is extremely dangerous for Donald Trump. This is not a good day. This is somebody who can be a direct witness against him and who is very credible.